I had never been more excited in my life. Paris. The city of lights, love, and endless possibilities. I was here for the gymnastics championship, representing my country. It was a dream come true. As soon as I landed, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness bubbling inside me. My first night in Paris was magical. The Eiffel Tower lit up the night sky, and the streets were bustling with life. I was staying in a quaint little hotel near the competition venue. After a quick dinner, I decided to take a stroll around the neighborhood to soak in the Parisian vibe. That's when things started to get weird. Walking back to my hotel, I felt like someone was watching me. I brushed it off as paranoia from being in a new city. But as I turned a corner, I saw a shadowy figure standing under a streetlight. It was just for a moment, but it sent chills down my spine. I quickened my pace and reached the safety of my hotel room, trying to shake off the unease. The next day was all about the competition. The arena was filled with talented gymnasts from all over the world. The atmosphere was electric. I nailed my routine, and the crowd's applause was deafening. It felt incredible. During a break, I made some new friends. We decided to explore Paris together after the day's events. Over coffee, they told me about the catacombs, a labyrinth of tunnels under the city filled with the bones of millions. It sounded creepy but fascinating. We planned a visit for the next day. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the shadowy figure. My new friends laughed it off, saying Paris had a way of playing tricks on you. But I wasn't so sure. The day of our catacombs visit arrived. We were a small group, just me, Lisa, Tom, and our guide, Jacques. He led us through narrow streets to a hidden entrance. The air grew colder as we descended into the dark, damp tunnels. Jacques told us the history of the catacombs, how they were old limestone quarries turned into a burial place when the city's cemeteries overflowed. It was eerie to think about the millions of bones surrounding us. As we ventured deeper, the light from our flashlights flickered. Strange sounds echoed through the tunnels. At one point, I thought I saw a shadow move, but when I pointed it out, no one else seemed to notice. My heart raced, but I tried to stay calm. We had been walking through the catacombs for what felt like hours. The endless walls of bones started to blur together, creating an unnerving backdrop. I lagged behind the group, captivated by the eerie history that surrounded us. Suddenly, I noticed an opening in the wall, leading to a narrower, unlit tunnel. Curiosity got the better of me, and I stepped inside. Almost immediately, I regretted it. The air was colder, and the silence was suffocating. I turned to rejoin my friends, but the opening was gone. Panic set in. I shouted for Lisa, Tom, and Jacques, but my voice echoed back to me, empty and alone. Then, I heard it, a soft whispering, like 1,000 voices speaking in unison. I turned, and there it was. A shadowy figure, more defined this time, floated toward me. Its eyes were hollow, and a malevolent grin spread across its face. I was paralyzed with fear. "Why are you here?" it hissed. Its voice echoed in my mind, sending shivers down my spine. I tried to move, but my legs felt like lead. The figure reached out, and a cold, invisible hand gripped my arm. Pain shot through me, and I let out a scream. With a burst of adrenaline, I broke free from the spirit's grasp and ran blindly through the dark tunnels. The whispers grew louder, filling my ears with terrifying voices. I stumbled and fell, scraping my knees on the rough ground. The spirit was close behind, its presence chilling me to the bone. Desperate, I remembered Jacques' instructions and tried to retrace my steps. Every turn seemed wrong, every shadow a potential threat. The bones around me seemed to shift and move, creating an ever-changing maze. My heart pounded, and my breaths came in ragged gasps. Finally, I saw a faint light in the distance. Summoning every ounce of strength, I sprinted towards it. I burst into a larger chamber where Jacques and the others were waiting, their faces pale with worry. "Emma, where were you?" Lisa cried. I could barely speak, my body trembling uncontrollably. "We need to leave. Now," I managed to gasp. Jacques didn't hesitate. He led us quickly out of the catacombs, and I felt the spirit's presence fade as we emerged into the daylight. But the terror lingered, a shadow that refused to lift. Back at the hotel, I tried to shake off the experience. I told myself it was just my imagination, a trick of the dark. But strange things started happening. At night, I heard whispers coming from the corners of my room. Objects moved on their own. I felt cold spots, as if the spirit was right there with me. I confided in Lisa and Tom, but they were skeptical. "Maybe you just need some rest," Tom suggested. "You've been under a lot of stress." But it wasn't stress. The spirit had followed me, and it was getting stronger. One night, I woke up to find it standing at the foot of my bed, its hollow eyes staring into mine. "You can't escape," it whispered. I screamed, and it vanished, leaving me shaking and drenched in sweat. I knew I had to do something. This spirit was not going to leave me alone. After some research, I found an old legend about a way to confront and banish spirits in the catacombs. It involved a ritual, a confrontation with the spirit on its own ground. It was dangerous, but I had no choice. I gathered the necessary items and convinced Lisa and Tom to come with me. They were reluctant, but they saw how desperate I was. We descended into the catacombs one last time. The tunnel seemed even more menacing now, knowing what awaited us. We reached the chamber where I first encountered the spirit. I began the ritual, chanting the words I had memorized. The air grew cold, and the spirit appeared, more solid and terrifying than ever. "You dare challenge me?" it hissed. "Leave me alone," I shouted, my voice trembling. The spirit lunged at me, and I held up the talisman I had brought. A blinding light filled the chamber, and the spirit shrieked in pain. It fought back, but the light grew stronger, pushing it away. With one final scream, the spirit vanished, leaving only silence. We emerged from the catacombs, exhausted but relieved. The haunting presence was gone. I could finally breathe again. The experience had changed me, though. Paris no longer felt like the city of lights and love. It had shown me its darkest side. I returned to my normal life, but the memories lingered. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, I thought I could still hear the faint whispers of the catacombs. But I knew the spirit was gone, and I was safe. Paris had tested me, pushed me to my limits, and in the end, I had faced my fears. But the shadows of Paris would always be a part of me, a reminder of the darkness that lurks beneath the surface, waiting for those who dare to venture too deep. The days following our final confrontation in the catacombs were surreal. I tried to piece my life back together, but the experience had left a mark. Every dark corner, every sudden chill in the air, brought back memories of the spirit's haunting presence. Gymnastics had always been my escape, my passion. Returning to training helped distract me, but the shadows still lingered. I found myself glancing over my shoulder more often, feeling a constant unease. My performance suffered, and I struggled to focus on routines that once came naturally to me. Lisa and Tom were my rocks during this time. They stayed close, making sure I wasn't alone. We talked about the catacombs, the spirit, and the terror we faced. It helped, but some wounds ran too deep to be healed by mere conversation. Life eventually found a new rhythm. I threw myself into preparations for the next competition, determined to reclaim some sense of normalcy. Yet, I couldn't ignore the changes within me. I was more cautious, more aware of the world's darker sides. Paris had lost some of its magic, replaced by a sense of wariness. One night, while working on a routine, I felt a familiar chill. The hairs on my neck stood up, and I froze. But nothing happened. The spirit was gone, but the fear it instilled in me remained. I took a deep breath and pushed through, finishing my practice. Slowly, I regained my confidence. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in trauma, and she helped me process what happened. With time, the nightmares became less frequent, and the whispers faded. Months passed, and I began to feel like myself again. I competed in several tournaments, performing better than I ever had. Yet, the experience in the catacombs was never far from my mind. It had become a part of me, shaping my outlook on life. One evening, while walking through a park, I noticed a shadowy figure in the distance. My heart raced, but as I got closer, I saw it was just a statue. I laughed at my paranoia, but the sense of being watched never fully left me. I started researching the history of hauntings and spirits. I wanted to understand more about what we had encountered. The more I learned, the more I realized how lucky we had been. Many others had not been so fortunate. Years later, I returned to Paris for another competition. It felt different this time, less intimidating. I visited old haunts, reminisced about the good times, and tried to bury the bad memories. But one night, curiosity got the better of me, and I found myself back near the entrance to the catacombs. I stood there, staring at the dark opening. Part of me wanted to go back in, to face my fears head-on. But I knew better. Some doors are best left closed. As I turned to leave, a cold breeze swept past me, carrying a faint whisper. "You can never escape." I shivered, quickening my pace. Whether it was my imagination or something more, I couldn't tell. But I knew one thing. The shadows of Paris would always be with me, a haunting reminder of the darkness that lies beneath the surface.